Welcome to this week's video. This is another gig diary, but with a slight difference. Now, I've been doing these gig diaries in an attempt to show you what it's like to be a professional musician working in the UK. And normally what I do is show you all the gigs I've done since the last video, and there's about 7 of them this time, but I'm not going to show you all of those because I want to concentrate on a couple of points. I did 2 gigs with a band that I've not worked with before, kind of doing rock and rolly stuff, and it was mainly going to be on acoustic guitar, but I took my Gretsch along as well, and I wasn't sure what to take, and I ended up taking my Quad Cortex and using it in what I thought was a rather clever way. So coming up in this video, I'm going to show you the way I set up the Quad Cortex. I used it in about 3 different ways on one gig, which I thought was rather ingenious. Then I'm going to show you gradually the change in sound between using just the Quad Cortex DI'd into the PA, then using it as a pedal board, and then not using it at all, using all proper analog gear, and see what you think of the difference in sound as we go through. Without further ado, let's move on to me showing you around this rather clever preset. The gig I was doing was with a band called the Vincents, hence the name of this preset, and I was required to play acoustic guitar, and it's possibly all going to be on acoustic guitar, but a lot of the stuff they sent me was rock and roll, and I thought the Gretsch would be quite useful. So I wanted to take my Gretsch, and what I did, this is how the preset started. I plugged my acoustic guitar into in 1, and then it comes out of, well, all of the outputs, and I had it in mono, so I used the 2 XLR outputs, one going to my little powered monitor. I've got a Mackie 350, I think it is, with a 10-inch speaker, and the other one going into the PA. And then into the second input. In fact, let me show you those inputs. That's the 2 inputs. You can put either XLR or jack, but I was using jack straight from the guitar. So I had the acoustic going into there and the Gretsch going into there. Both guitars were going into here, out into my little monitor speaker, which I could control the volume of like a guitar amp or a full range speaker effectively, although it's not a guitar cab, it's just a powered PA speaker. And then the other one going into the PA. What I had set up here is a gain block, which I used to kick on for solos. I had an EQ block, just so I could make any changes to make it sound alright where I was, and I didn't have to do much. I just slightly reduced the bass and added a little bit of top. And then, if you've seen any of my acoustic guitar videos before, I have running in parallel this cab block where I can load an IR. I hear in the next update they're going to have an IR loader, so I can get rid of this cab block and use a proper IR loader, and an EQ after it to EQ the IR, the impulse response, which I'm going to be able to do all in one thing when the new IR loader comes. In fact, I won't have it in parallel anymore, because I think you can add however much of the IR you want into the signal, so I'll probably shift it up here on my acoustic guitar presets. Then I've got a simple delay. Actually, that is in stereo, which is a bit silly. That should have been a mono one. And then I've got reverb on a hall reverb on the acoustic guitar. And finally, I've got another gain block, which I use when I put the acoustic guitar down, because I've got them both plugged in at the same time. It was just, if you look at the settings here, level 0, it's just to mute it. If I go into the gig mode, I've got it set, so the top row is the acoustic, so that's my gain for solos. Bit of delay if I want it. The reverb was on all the time, so I didn't need a foot switch, and that gain is the one that mutes the acoustic when I'm playing the electric. It'd be nice if we could rename these. I'm not sure if you can. If anyone knows, let me know. Right, so let me show you a bit of footage of what it sounded like using the acoustic guitar. Onto the electric guitar, onto the Gretsch. After a few songs I switched onto the Gretsch, and the way I've got this set up is I'm going into, as I showed you earlier, so it's a completely separate path. So I'd mute the acoustic guitar by activating that block. First thing is my own capture of my EP booster, which I tend to use because that sounds nice. Then I needed a bit of boost for the solos, something to graunch it up slightly, and I used the Myth Drive, which is the Klon one, I believe. Then a tape delay, a mono one, in an attempt to sound as much like my Space Echo as possible. Then into, a bit of tremolo, I actually didn't use that, so let's not worry about that. Then into my car Viceroy capture of my own amp, which is my, not the amp I'm going to show you later because that's my new one, but I haven't captured the new one yet, but that's the car Viceroy, which I think sounds best out of all my amps that I've captured. And then finally another gain block, and this was just as a boost for the solo. I've put that after the amp, so it's a kind of just a volume boost rather than the gain boost. And I put on the outputs, on both outputs, I attached my expression pedal so I could have an overall volume. So if I was changing guitars or unplugging, I could just kick the volume pedal back, and that would work for both. So let me show you what the Gretsch sounded like through the PA. Here's a bit of footage.
Your love so bad. Thank you very much.
Then in the interval I was struggling a little bit, I have to say, with the Gretsch going through the PA. I was struggling to hear it, and it was breaking up more than I wanted, which I think is why I moved the gain block after the thing, and I probably was using that instead of the mythical drive, which I may not have had on actually in that last clip. I added that for this next clip. Was I went and got my Milkman pedal steel mini out of the car, which I took with me just in case. And then what I did, and I thought this was rather clever, on this output I did the output 1 and 2, which I showed you earlier, which was the one that's going one to my monitor speaker and one to the PA. And then out of here I came out of output 3. That's this output here, and I sent from that output straight into my amplifier. So I went into there with the electric guitar and then out of there, and the acoustic guitar is going in there and out of these two, so it's two completely independent paths. And then what I did, so I've got out 3 there, turned off the amp emulator, the car model there, but I still used the delay and the boost, and I think that's why I put the mythical drive, because I think if I look in that, yeah, I just turned the level down, just added a little bit of gain, not much. It wasn't very distorted or overdriven, it just added a little bit of edge onto the sound. So yeah, I've got my EP boost, which I could turn on and off, the tape delay, which I could turn on and off, the tremolo, which I didn't really use, and then the mythical drive, which I kicked on for solos. So let me show you what that sounded like into the amp.
Take me home, baby.
Fast forward a week and I'm doing another gig with the same band, and this time I decided I'm not going to use my Quad Cortex for the electric guitar. I used it in the same way for the acoustic guitar, but I decided I was going to take my Roland Space Echo. Now let me show you that. Oh. Now before we go too much further, I'm just going to highlight one of the advantages of the Quad Cortex. as maybe it might not compete sound wise. Just a little spoiler for later. Yeah, that's much easier, but this old lump does sound quite good, as you're going to see.
I love her so.
What I'm going to do here is go through the progression from using just the Quad Cortex straight into the PA on one of the tracks. Then the next track I'm going to be using just the Quad Cortex as a pedal board, in and out of it, no amp emulation into my guitar amp. And then finally I'm going to be going straight from the Gretsch into my Empress Germ drive, which is a germanium chip little boost pedal. It's meant to sound a bit like a tweed. I didn't really use it for much overdrive, I just used it to boost a bit of treble and boost the signal. And then into the Space Echo, and then into my Milkman Pedal Steel Mini, which is the amp I've used on both of these clips where I'm using an amp. So I'm going to work through that progression and see what you think of the change in sound. Well, there we are. Now I'd like to know what you think about that, but personally I don't really think there's much competition between the proper analog sound and the Quad Cortex. I mean, I'm still going to use the Quad Cortex where appropriate, because sometimes it's just much easier and, well, smaller for a start. And also, you know, if you don't want a lot of volume on stage, it's great. I mean, that's why I took it in the first place, really, because I was a bit worried that the amp might be a bit too loud, but I managed to get a decent sound at low volume using the Milkman amp. But maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but I think the Space Echo into the amp sounded fantastic. There's a kind of three-dimensionality. It's more 3D. There's something about the sound. You also get a weird chorusy effect because the way the tape isn't running very accurately. It's not running the speed of it. It keeps slowing it down and speeding up, so you get this nice chorusy effect, which you can't really emulate using even the tape echo on the Quad Cortex. I mean, I was really pleased with that sound, and I'm hopefully going to use that setup again if I can be bothered to cart this big old lump around. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm bringing out new videos every Friday, 7 PM UK time, so I hope to see you next week.